Hello and welcome. I'm Ijoma Onyato. Tonight, federal government and organized labor locked in negotiation for over 5 hours on the implementation of the new national minimum wage. Meeting between INEC officials and stakeholders in Yenagoa ahead of governorship election in Bayelsa State turns rowdy. President Buhari restates call for unity of the country as he launches the 2020 Armed Forces Remembrance Emblem at the presidential villa. And Turkish President Recep Erdogan vows to continue the Syria offensive until his mission to create a safe zone in the north of the country is accomplished.
On business news tonight, International Monetary Fund (IMF) recommends tax revenue reforms to tackle Nigeria's debt repayment challenge.
On sports news tonight, FC Barcelona star Lionel Messi receives record 6th European Golden Shoe for 2018-19 campaign.
And from Abuja, federal government releases new guidelines for travel by government officials as part of move to cut costs of governance.
The Labour movement and the federal government delegation have been meeting for over 5 hours without a communique or agreement reached on the full implementation of the new minimum wage. The negotiation resumed today after their meeting over the same matter was deadlocked yesterday. Whatever decision is reached at the end of today's meeting will determine if the workers' union will direct its members across the country to begin a nationwide strike immediately or not. The Joint Public Servants Negotiating Council has scheduled a nationwide strike to take off today, but the ongoing negotiation may change the narrative if a truce is reached. The labour unions are demanding a 29% salary increase for officers on grade 7 to 14 and 24% to grade 15 to 17, while the federal government proposes 11% for officers on grade level 7 to 14 and 6.5% for officers on grade 15 to 17. The government and the workers' unions are keeping sealed lips on who will shift ground on the demands and proposals already on the table.
I don't give you things.
All right, now let's take a closer look at the issues. I'm being joined live from Abuja by an economist and the former Director General of the Abuja Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Chijioke Ekechukwu. Thanks a lot for joining us on the news at 10. Now, we've been waiting all day just to see what Labour is going to do. Some people have wondered why we're even at this point post-election. What do you make of the back and forth that you can see concerning these negotiations?
In my opinion, I think communication broke down somewhere. I see a situation where Labour probably didn't understand what the minimum wage meant, or government didn't really explain to Labour what they actually meant by minimum wage. Some people may say, yeah, it had to do with pre-election promises, but I'm thinking it had to do a lot with communication breakdown. So there now became need for them to get back to the drawing table and to go back to negotiate again. It became necessary so that the two parties will understand what they actually meant at the time of the initial negotiation.
All right, well, you see it that way, but some people are calling the Labour side the 29-24 and the government the 11-6.5. But economists like yourself are already looking at what this has to do with the budget, etc. Does this have any impact on budget 2020, which is already being discussed, whichever way it goes?
Yeah, a lot of it. We're already having a lot of deficit in our budget, and the government didn't make extra provisions for all along review of salary. The provisions we saw was just that of the minimum wage of 30,000 naira. And the impact on the budget is going to be huge because we need a lot of revenue to be able to meet all this going forward. And it is also necessary that since we are talking about revenue that is not just enough, we need to do a whole lot to reduce our expenditure pattern. We've been seeing cries from all over the country that we need to reduce the cost of governance, and that has been taken for granted over the years. We indeed, as a country, need to reduce cost of governance in all sectors, in all the various tiers of government. And when we do that, we should be able to save a lot of money to take care of the minimum wage issues.
What about the argument that was put by some of the state governors, initially when all this started, that states should pay what they can afford to pay? It should be, that's the way this thing should be determined. Do you still feel that way? And is that one of the reasons this is dragging on this long?
Well, I know that when states take the responsibility to pay, they will look for the money to pay. What we have seen happening in all the state capitals is the fact that every month they all rely on what is coming from the federal to be able to pay their workers and meet their own expenditure. When they take that responsibility, take the bull by the horn and decide that they're going to pay it, obviously they're going to work out their internal revenue generation. They're going to work out business opportunities that can generate revenues to take care of that aspect. So first thing they have to do is to accept that they can do it, and then they work out the revenue side of it to be able to take care of that.
And so we're waiting for the outcome of that meeting. How do you see it if no agreement is reached today with the stand by Labour saying that, okay, perhaps a strike may be the way out? How do you see this ending up? Remember, workers are actually waiting for their salaries, and they are the ones who should be considered in this. What do you think?
We expect, and I expect, that there has to be a truce between government and the labor. Truce is very important because the outcome, the repercussion, the consequence of a strike is going to be huge on the country, because this is a country that is trying to stabilize economically, a country that has to do a lot to actually sustain some level of stability. If we go on strike right now, it's going to affect us adversely. We're going to drop a whole lot in the growth, economic growth we're already getting, and so we need to do everything to avoid a strike. I know that Labour may be projecting that, but they should also look at the consequences of going on strike. The impact is going to be so heavy on the economy of this country and then on the economic growth that we're already having. And international community is also watching. When this happens, they will consider it as instability. And so government on their own should also be a little clearer to Labour to be able to let them understand exactly what they mean. And they need to also have good intentions. And if they have good intentions, they need to mean their intentions in order for everybody to have a very clear playing ground.
All right, Director General of Abuja Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. Chijioke Ekechukwu, thanks a lot for joining us on the News at 10 and sharing your thoughts with us as well. Just to remind you again that meeting is still ongoing here at Channels Television. We're keeping our eye on it, and when we know something, you will as well. We move on from those negotiations, and it's less than a month to the Bayelsa governorship election, and the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has been meeting with stakeholders in the state to discuss how to achieve a violence-free election. But the session today in Yenagoa leaves the electoral umpire with no option but to brace up for any eventualities, as a routine stakeholders meeting ended in chaos right in the presence of the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmood Yakubu.
If there was any doubt that the Independent National Electoral Commission, INEC, has to create a watertight strategy to ensure that the upcoming 2019 governorship election in Bayelsa State does not end up inconclusive as a result of violence or other electoral vices, that doubt has been erased today, as the INEC chairman witnessed firsthand how violence-prone elections in Bayelsa State can be. This meeting was planned to be a peaceful interactive session, a gathering of like minds to ensure that INEC achieves a hitch-free election. The INEC chairman says he hopes to conduct a hitch-free election, a position which was corroborated by the Deputy Inspector General of Police, who read the Riot Act to those who may want to engage in violence.
The idea of where staff of INEC will be molested will not be tolerated. Snatching of ballot boxes, thuggery will never be allowed.
Some of the stakeholders also shared their concerns.
Materials should be taken down to the unity ground, not to rack centers.
Most of the innocent mistakes were made by the ad hoc staff because they don't even know what they are doing.
They get answers to their worries from the INEC chairman.
The materials will ultimately get to the polling units. To be very candid, it may not be feasible to move all the materials a day or two before the election to the polling units. But we'll make sure that we operate the racks, secure the racks, so that materials reach at least the racks on Friday evening.
The INEC chairman seems encouraged by the outpouring of concern by the politicians and therefore allowed more people to speak, a situation that resulted in chaos.
Why don't you mention your tap? There was a massive ambush.
After several attempts to bring the situation under control, the meeting ended abruptly as the INEC chairman informed everyone of the lesson learned from the meeting.
We engage with the traditional rulers. Today we engage with the political parties. And we are coming back for further engagement until the issues that precipitated some of the challenges we experienced in the previous elections are addressed.
With exactly 30 days to the governorship election in Bayelsa State, the Independent National Electoral Commission clearly cannot fold its arms, but put action in motion to ensure a violence-free election.
President Muhammadu Buhari has restated his administration's commitment to securing the country, insisting that security and the unity of Nigeria is non-negotiable. But the president also wants Nigerians to be security conscious as he extols the sacrifices of the military. The president was speaking at the launch of the Appeal Fund emblem for the 2020 Armed Forces Remembrance Day celebrations.
Just before the weekly Federal Executive Council meeting, President Buhari and Vice President Professor Emil Shibaju wear the Appeal Fund emblem with pride. It's an appeal fund in support of the families of departed military personnel and the injured. This is coming ahead of the 2020 Armed Forces Remembrance Day celebration on January the 15th.
For those who survived,
in his remarks, President Buhari calls on citizens not to lose sight of the sacrifices made.
We must at all times avoid actions that emphasize our differences.
There were sacrifices made to secure the country, a task the president said is non-negotiable.
The peace and security of Nigeria is non-negotiable, and the security agencies must continue to do their work diligently. As a government, we will continue to provide necessary logistical support to ensure that our armed forces operate with the best modern warfare equipment, while at the same time adequately addressing the issues of their welfare.
The federal government donated the sum of 10 million naira to the Nigerian Legion with an appeal for more.
I therefore call on you to donate generously to the worthy cause to enable the nation fulfill her responsibility to Nigerian Legion and the families of the fallen heroes.
At the event were the Senate President, the service chiefs, secretaries to the government of the Federation and members of the military, as well as the Nigerian Legion. Ceremony over, President Buhari chaired the meeting of the Federal Executive Council. The meeting considered and approved memoranda from 3 ministries, including the construction of a shooting range for aviation security personnel.
And the total contract sum is 2,413,963,035 naira and 75 kobo.
Other approvals are for the Ministry of Transportation and Petroleum.
Was the one for the purchase and installation of 300 buoys on the River Niger for the inland waterways.
2 oil and gas parks were approved in council.
The oil and gas parks to be sited in Akwa Ibom and Bayelsa states and the other projects are expected to create over 1,000 jobs when completed. From the presidential villa, Ibrahim Adra, Channels Television News.
In part 2, after the break, the national question re-echoes at the 60th anniversary of the Metropolitan Club in Lagos as members gather for a lecture on Nigeria's governance